A Course in
What?
with Cynthia Morgan.
Hey, course friends, welcome to A Course in What? I'm Cynthia Morgan, and this is a podcast in which I read and discuss the text of A Course in Miracles. And this is episode number 11. So thank you for joining me today. I've received a few nice emails this week, and I just want to say thank you. I really enjoy hearing others' experience with the course, and I just love reading them. So keep them coming. And if it's something that I think other students might benefit from, I'll share it anonymously as well. You can get in touch with me by emailing me at acourseinwhat@gmail.com, or you can go to my website at www.cynthiamorgan.us. So thank you. So we are on Chapter 1, The Meaning of Miracles, Section 6, The Illusion of Needs. And I'm just going to get straight into the text because we only have these two sections left and we will have finished Chapter 1. So I'm sure you're as excited as I am to be finishing the first chapter. Just like the title, The Illusion of Needs, this section talks about how what we think of as, quote, needs are illusions, something that's lacking within us. Paragraph 1, sentence 1, you who want peace can find it only by complete forgiveness. You may recall that to forgive is to overlook. That's the definition according to the Course. And what are we overlooking? The separation. Our ego's mistaken belief that we are separate from everyone, including animals and everything, and from God. So what does it mean that we can only find peace through forgiveness? Well, peace lies on the other side of our mind, with the Holy Spirit or with spirit, whatever is a comfortable word for you. So you can never find peace in your wrong mind. That mind will tell you that peace is in the world. That mind will tell you that something needs to be changed before you can find peace. And that doesn't mean that you don't work to change yourself or your behavior or the world on the behavioral level. It just means that your peace won't be found in what you do. It'll be found in how you perceive what you do. So peace resides on the forgiving side of your mind, the side that does not believe in separation. So you can only find peace through God. 2, no learning is acquired by anyone unless he wants to learn it and believes in some way that he needs it. So again, this term, unless he wants it, that could be read, no learning is acquired by anyone unless he's willing to learn it. The Course says that all you need to achieve the atonement is the little willingness to have your perception healed. So you have to want to undo your ego in order for it to be undone. You have to have that little willingness. It's like in 12-step, that idea that your best thinking got you here. You have to want to be in recovery in order to begin to heal. And you have to want to be in recovery from your ego. You have to have the willingness to look at your perceptions, to ask the Holy Spirit to have your perception healed in order for this to work. 3, while lack does not exist in the creation of God, it is very apparent in what you have made. So this whole section is really about this idea of separation. And once we had the idea of separation, we created a perceived lack or a need that then the ego told us to fill through the world or through things or people or whatever that is. So all of us have this perceived lack that we search to fill in the world. But the Course is saying the only lack is the lack of your awareness of your oneness with God. That's your true one lack. But the ego takes that lack and again projects it out into the world. So in sentence 3, while lack does not exist in the creation of God, once again, creation is a term that's used in association with God. There is no lack in God, but it's very apparent in what you have made. Again, made is a term associated with projection or the ego. So it's clear in this world that we have lack, that there isn't enough food, there isn't enough money, that Without air, our bodies will die. So there's always these lacks that need to be filled on the physical level. So it's very apparent, it's saying, that there's lack in the world, in the reality with a small r that you've created. 4, it is in fact the essential difference between them, between the creation of God and what we've made, between our dream of separation, this hallucination or nightmare where everything is lacking. So the difference is that there is no lack in God and there is lack in the ego. 5, lack implies that you would be better off in a state somehow different from the one you are in. So that's why we're always looking to change something in our lives, because the ego tells us that if you just change this, if you just get this, if you just acquire this, then you will be filled and at peace. But in fact, we never are. 6, until the quote separation, which is the meaning of the fall, nothing was lacking. And that's another way of saying that when we had the perception of being at one with God, there were no needs. 7, there were no needs at all. 8, needs arise only when you deprive yourself. So only when you think with the ego, when you deprive yourself of your reality. 9, you act according to the particular order of needs you establish. So if you believe that you are your ego, you will have all kinds of needs, all kinds of orders of needs, needs for shelter, needs for food, needs for social activities, etc., because you will be thinking with this idea that you're lacking. 10, this in turn depends on your perception of what you are. Seeing yourself from the ego creates these needs. Now, of course, on this level of reality, we do have needs. Our body does need air. It needs food. We need other people. And so it's not saying that's wrong. Of course, we do need all of that. It's just saying that that's not your true reality. It's like, I don't know if you've ever read any like Robert Monroe or any of these people who have out-of-body experiences and they are able to perceive the other side. Or in hypnosis, I'll regress people to a pre-incarnate state, to the state before they incarnated into the physical world. And in that state, there isn't the same needs that we have here in the physical world. There isn't a need for food. There isn't a need for air in order for the perceived body on the other side to live. So these perceived needs are only in this physical reality, and that's what it's saying. It's not saying that you shouldn't do what you feel like you need. You obviously need a roof over your head and you need food and all of that, but it's just saying that's not your reality with a capital R. Spirit doesn't need those things. Paragraph 2. A sense of separation from God is the only lack you really need correct. The thought of separation from God in your mind is the only need that needs to be corrected. Not changing everything on the physical level, thinking that that is going to give you what you're looking for. 2, this sense of separation would never have arisen if you had not distorted your perception of truth and had thus perceived yourself as lacking. So that's referring to the separation or the fall. When we first had, as the Course calls it, the tiny mad idea of separation, where after that, everything was distorted. 3, the idea of order of needs arose because having made this fundamental error, you had already fragmented yourself into levels with different needs. So you fragmented yourself into mind, body, spirit, all of those needing something else. I think this order of needs is a psychological term that they actually use in psychology, like a baby's order of needs and progression into adulthood, etc. We have to remember that Helen was a psychologist, so she had some insight into some of these ideas that the general public just doesn't. 4, as you integrate, you become one, and your needs become one accordingly. So as you recognize that there is only one need, then everything begins to work towards that. Everything that you do is in reflection of that one desire to join with God, that one need to return home. 5, unified needs lead to unified action because this produces a lack of conflict. No longer is there any conflict in your mind between what you need because there's no conflict between your ego and the Holy Spirit. You've chosen the Holy Spirit as your teacher. Because you are still vacillating between your ego and the Holy Spirit as your guide and listening to that ego, that's producing conflict in your life. It just means you need to choose the right teacher. And once you choose the right teacher, no matter what the problem is, it's resolved in terms of meaning that there is no more conflict in your mind. 3, the idea of orders of need, which follows from the original error that one can be separated from God, requires correction at its own level before the error of perceiving levels at all can be corrected. I don't know, this is a hard section. So I'm trying to make it as simple as possible here. So what this is saying is that in order to heal that one error, you first have to move through your own atonement lessons. Remember that everyone has a highly individualized path of atonement. Your path of atonement is unique to you, meaning the lessons that you have to learn are unique to you. Again, the content of everyone's lessons is the same. It's to forgive, to overlook the ego, to awaken to the reality that we are at one with everything, everyone, and with God. But before we can do that, we have to use those lessons that are in front of us every day. So that's what it means by it requires correction at its own level. In other words, you don't want to jump ahead, nor can you. You can't jump ahead to oneness with God. It's like slowly climbing up those stairs in that shopping mall of time. You have to slowly climb these stairs and learn these lessons in order to return home. 2, you cannot behave effectively while you function on different levels. So your behavior is going to reflect the guide in your mind, the ego or the Holy Spirit. However, while you do, correction must be introduced vertically from the bottom up. 2, you cannot behave effectively while you function on different levels. So if you believe that you are a body, you're going to behave differently than if you believe that you are a spirit. And it says, however, while you do, correction must be introduced vertically from the bottom up. While you do believe that you are a body, correction must be introduced from where you believe you are, at the bottom, in a body. 4, this is because you think you live in space, where concepts of up and down are meaningful. That's another way of saying that you believe you live in this world. 5, ultimately, space is as meaningless as time. 6, both are merely beliefs. Okay, and we talked about that idea of time in a couple of the other podcast episodes, that time is part of the separation and the illusion as well as space. Paragraph 4, the real purpose of this world is to use it to correct your unbelief. And we've talked about that idea that if we just stopped with the idea that we made this world of separation, then we would just get depressed. There's another purpose for the reason that we made this world of separation, and that is to correct our misperceptions, to correct our misbeliefs, to correct our mind. And so that's why it's saying this world can be used to correct your unbeliefs. That's your atonement path. So see the purpose in it. When you wake up every day, you say, let this day be guided by the Holy Spirit. Let my mind be healed today. Everything that occurs today is a tool, a lesson to heal my mind. 2, you can never control the effects of fear yourself because you made fear. And you believe in what you made. So you can't transcend the effects of fear, those imagine needs that you have as well, because you made all of that. You created your reality and you believe in what you made. At this point, we believe that this physical world is real, that our problems are real here, that our experiences are real here. 3, in attitude then, though not in content, you resemble your Creator, who has perfect faith in His creations because He created them. So it's saying that we have the creative ability like our Creator. We're just using it to miscreate, so to speak. 5, that is why you can believe what no one else thinks is true. And there's another line in A Course in Miracles that this reminds me of, which says, beliefs are real to the believer. We project out what we believe is true, and then we see it in the world, and that then validates for us our belief system. 6, it is true for you because it was made by you. Paragraph 5, all aspects of fear are untrue because they do not exist at the creative level and therefore do not exist at all. So this is an example of where the word creative is being used in association with the Holy Spirit or God. All aspects of fear are untrue because they don't exist at the level of God. And when it says all aspects of fear, that just means anything that comes from fear, whether it's neurosis or depression or anxiety or addiction or phobias, whatever it is, all aspects of fear are untrue, meaning it's not your truth. And it's good to remember that it's not the truth of someone else as well. 2, to whatever extent you are willing to submit your beliefs to this test, to that extent are your perceptions corrected. So it's saying that on the level of God, none of these beliefs and fears are true. So if you're willing to test that, meaning if you're willing to take those beliefs or that fear that you're holding on to and bring it to the love in your mind and place it side by side, you'll see that that isn't your reality. You can ask the Holy Spirit to have those thoughts and fears and guilt or whatever's going on in your life to be healed. And that will then show you and attest to what this is saying. That it's like bringing a cloud to the sun. The sun just melts the cloud away. 3, in sorting out the false from the true, the miracle proceeds along these lines. Perfect love casts out fear. If fear exists, then there is not perfect love. But only perfect love exists. If there is fear, it produces a state that does not exist. And again, you can only know that only perfect love exists and it casts out fear by bringing those thoughts to the Holy Spirit. 9, believe this and you will be free. 10, only God can establish this solution, and this faith is His gift. So the only way that you will understand your true reality is through the vision of the Holy Spirit, surrendering those ego perceptions. Section 7, Distortions of Miracle Impulses. Now, what's interesting to me about these last two sections is that Section 6 that we just read is the illusion of needs, and this is talking about impulses. So an impulse always follows a perceived need, and it's going to distinguish here between the miracle impulse, the impulse to join, with a physical impulse to separate. 1. Your distorted perceptions produce a dense cover over miracle impulses, making it hard for them to reach your own awareness. So we all have deep within us this miracle impulse. In other words, this impulse to join. It's our natural impulse to want to join with others and to join with God, even though we've forgotten that and we don't recognize that on a conscious level of awareness. So our ego distorts that impulse and covers that miracle impulse. And therefore, the ego makes it hard for us to be aware of those miracle impulses. 2, the confusion of miracle impulses with physical impulses is a major perceptual distortion. Now, this is very important because Kenneth has said that in this sentence, physical impulses first read sexual impulses. So let's read that again with the word sexual impulses. The confusion of miracle impulses with sexual impulses is a major perceptual distortion. We know that sex rules this physical reality. We know that it's through sex that the ego continually fragments into bodies. We know that sex keeps people rooted in their perception that they are a body. Now, of course, there's another purpose for sex, and that's the Holy Spirit's purpose. But what this is talking about is this ego impulse. And I think the reason that it was changed from sexual impulses to physical impulses is because sexual is so specific, but physical impulses include everything that the ego uses to keep us stuck in our body and in this belief in separation. So it could be food impulses. It could be a gambling impulse. It could be any of those dopamine releasing, pleasure seeking impulses. So when it says that it's a major perceptual distortion, it's saying that this innate desire in us to join on the level of the mind is confused and distorted by the ego and sublimated sexually, sublimated into the body. 3, physical impulses are misdirected miracle impulses. So any physical impulse that we have, the Course is saying what you're really seeking is to join on the level of the mind. The ego is telling you that you want to join on the level of a body. But that's not true. That's the misdirected impulse. 4, all real pleasure comes from doing God's will. So instead of those pleasure-seeking, dopamine-releasing activities that the ego tells us will fulfill us or fulfill that lack, Jesus is saying that's all mistaken. Your real pleasure will come from doing God's will. What is God's will? Extending love. 5, this is because not doing it is a denial of self. So when you're not extending love, when you're seeking to just get your ego gratified, you're in denial of your true self, and it will never give you true pleasure. 6, denial of self results in illusions, while correction of the error brings release from it. So the correction of the error in your mind brings the release from seeing yourself as separate or seeing yourself in a body that's lacking. 7, do not deceive yourself into believing that you can relate in peace to God or to your brothers with anything external. So it's saying don't try to join thinking that you can join with another in anything rather than the extension of the love in your mind through forgiveness, through acceptance, through peace, etc. Paragraph 2, child of God, you were created to create the good, the beautiful, and the holy. I love that sentence. What it's saying is that we were created to create like our Creator, to extend love, to extend true empathy, to join with our brothers, to put beauty into the world, whatever that means to you. 2, do not forget this. In other words, that's your purpose here. 3, the love of God for a little while must still be expressed through one body to another because vision is still so dim. So this is important because he's saying that for a little while, meaning while you still believe in this world and while you are in this world, which isn't to us a little while, it's like eons, but from his perception, he's just saying for a little while you still believe you're in a body, you must still express that love of God through one body to another. So we need the body. We need the body in this world. It becomes that communication device, that learning tool in order to help us and to help other people to remember the truth and to wake up. 4, you can use your body best to help you enlarge your perception so you can achieve real vision of which the physical eye is incapable. And again, it's contrasting perception as an ego term with the real vision of the Holy Spirit. Now, that real vision does not have anything to do with the body. It's the perception, so to speak, of the Holy Spirit. That's the vision. And that's why it says, in which the physical eye is incapable. It doesn't have anything to do with the body or the physical eye. 5, learning to do this is the body's only true usefulness. So using the body in order to learn our lessons and to heal our mind is our body's true usefulness. Paragraph 3, fantasy is a distorted form of vision. So a fantasy is really trying to control reality to use it for self-gratification, whatever that is. So it's always an ego idea. It's a distorted form of vision because we have the power to create whatever we want to create. So we can use the vision of the Holy Spirit to create, or we can use fantasy, meaning the ego. 2, fantasies of any kind are distortions because they always involve twisting perception into unreality. So this sentence is basically saying sort of the same thing. So fantasies are distortions. They're the twisting of perception. It's unreal. It's not the reality. It goes back to our summary of A Course in Miracles. Nothing real can be threatened. Nothing unreal exists. Herein lies the peace of God. And so those fantasies, those ego distortions, are always unreal. 3, actions that stem from distortions are literally the reactions of those who know not what they do. So in other words, if you don't know who you are, your actions will stem from that distortion. So you will behave in a certain way. So not only at the end of that sentence, who know not what they do, but you could say, who know not who they are. 4, fantasy is an attempt to control reality according to false needs. So if you believe that you're lacking, you will then have those false needs. And you attempt to control reality. You attempt to get those needs fulfilled through whatever means we just discussed, and control reality by making the ego real. 5, twist reality in any way, and you are perceiving destructively. So it's saying if you're not perceiving with the Holy Spirit and with God, then you're perceiving destructively, meaning it could be destructively in that you end up killing yourself or other people, but really it just means anything destructive is an idea that keeps us stuck in our body and believing that the separation is real. 6, fantasies are a means of making false associations and attempting to obtain pleasure from them. Now again, I think that a lot of this was originally dictated in relationship to that first paragraph, second sentence with sexual impulses. So it's talking about sexual fantasies a lot. And you could read it that way in this paragraph. But we are extending to a broader perception of all of this and including anything that the ego fantasizes about. It could be fantasizing about murdering someone. It could be fantasizing about winning the lottery. It could be fantasizing about winning an argument, whatever that is. So I'll read that sentence again. 6, fantasies are a means of making false associations and attempting to obtain pleasure from them. So any fantasy is distorting the reality and trying to get this ego gratification out of that. 7, but although you can perceive false associations, you can never make them real except to yourself. So they're not true with a capital T. They might be your perceived reality in that moment or temporarily, but it doesn't mean that they're true. 8, you believe in what you make. Again, beliefs are real to the believer. 9, if you offer miracles, you will be equally strong in your belief in them. So he's saying there's an alternative to all this crazy making ego business going on, and that is you can shift your perception and believe in the miracle, and that will then give you that strength, that power, that control that you're really looking for. 10, the strength of your conviction will then sustain the belief of the miracle receiver. So it's just saying that your belief in that power of the miracle will then have an effect. 11, fantasies become totally unnecessary as the wholly satisfying nature of reality becomes apparent to both giver and receiver. So instead of seeing someone as a sexual conquest, let's say, and keeping yourself trapped in your body and that person trapped in their body, what it's saying is that underneath that physical impulse of the ego, behind that is the still small voice of the Holy Spirit. The Course says the ego speaks first and loudest. So behind that is that miracle impulse, the impulse to join on the level of the mind. So you just recognize these physical impulses, and then you invite the Holy Spirit or Jesus in, and you ask to have a miracle. There's a lesson of A Course in Miracles, I can't remember which one, let miracles replace my grievances, or something like that. Let a miracle replace this grievance. And that's the same idea. So you just ask the Holy Spirit to help you perceive this differently. But you first have to recognize what's going on in those physical impulses. I just did that this morning because I made chocolate chip cookies and I had 3. And so on my third one, I recognized that I didn't really want that chocolate chip cookie, but I ate the chocolate chip cookie. And so in the middle of eating it, I asked Jesus to enter my mind and to help me be filled through the miracle, through shifting my perception, rather than trying to seek some ego gratification in a chocolate chip cookie. And so this is saying, let's read it again, fantasies become totally unnecessary as the wholly satisfying nature of reality becomes apparent to both giver and receiver. So that wholly satisfying nature of reality is shifting my perception and extending that love to that other person. And that helps to heal my mind, and it helps to heal the receiver, the person that I first had the sexual impulse towards. Instead of just going with that and staying rooted in time, in guilt, in fear, in the ego thought system, I recognize what's occurring in that moment, and I have a shift in perception. And then I take that elevator up a floor or two. 12, reality is lost through usurpation, which produces tyranny. What this means is that the ego has usurped God in our mind. And that's what it's always trying to do. And that produces this tyranny. And it's always a vicious dictator, our ego. Even though it might be under the guise of being very pleasant, its goal is always vicious, and that is to usurp God. And often the way we do that is by usurping other people. And that's where those fantasies come in. 13, as long as a single slave remains to walk the earth, your release is not complete. So as long as we are a slave to the ego, and as long as we are keeping people, our brothers, slave to our ego perceptions, to our usurpation, then nobody is free. It's saying your release is not complete as long as you do this. 14, complete restoration of the sonship is the only goal of the miracle-minded. So again, it goes back to that unified goal of joining with God ultimately. So now in these last 2 paragraphs of this last chapter, Jesus sort of shifts gears and talks about the Course itself as a study program. Paragraph 4, this is a course in mind training. And again, It's not a course in behavior. It's not a course in action. It's a course in shifting your perception. 2, all learning involves attention and study at some level. So what he's saying is you have to, just like what you and I are doing right now, you have to pay attention to these words. You have to study these sentences. This text requires study and attention. Obviously, it's difficult to get through. 3, some of the later parts of the course rest too heavily on these earlier sections not to require their careful study. So he's going to expound these ideas throughout the course. That's why he's saying, pay attention to what this first chapter is saying. And I think we've done a pretty good job of that. 4, you will also need them for preparation. So for what he's going to prepare to ask us to do, we need to understand why we're doing what he's asking us to do. It seems to me, and I could be wrong, but that he's laying it out this way with the text first and the workbook second, because we're preparing ourselves to then apply those ideas through the workbook. But I don't know anyone who read the text first and then did the workbook lessons. Most people do the workbook lessons first and then read the text. And quite frankly, most people do the workbook lessons and don't read the text. So he's saying this text is very important, and this first chapter is very important. 5, without this, you may become much too fearful of what is to come to make constructive use of it. Again, you might stop at lesson number 18 because you don't really understand the process of undoing your ego and why you're doing what you're doing and why this lesson is telling you a certain thing. You may become too fearful. So you don't want to skip ahead. This is a carefully planned course. 6, however, as you study these earlier sections, you'll begin to see some of the implications that will be amplified later on. Paragraph 5. A solid foundation is necessary because of the confusion between fear and awe to which I have already referred and which is often made. So I think a lot of people come to A Course in Miracles as an ex-Christian or even an atheist, a fear of these ideas of God, with having grown up being programmed by the idea of a wrathful God. What he's saying is there's confusion between that fear and that awe. 2, I have said that awe is inappropriate in connection with the sons of God because you should not experience awe in the presence of your equals. And you may recall that Jesus is saying awe is inappropriate for him because he's our equal. 3, however, it was also emphasized, I like how he's summarizing this for us. However, it was also emphasized that awe is proper in the presence of your Creator. So awe is only reserved for God. 4, I have been careful to clarify my role in the atonement without either over or understating it. Yeah, I think that he's done that. I think he's clarified that for us in this first chapter. He is our brother. He's our brother who has transcended his ego. He's standing on top of the shopping mall and calling us to shift our perception, to be where he is, to raise us up to his level. 5, I am also trying to do the same with yours. He's trying to clarify our role for us. 6, I have stressed that awe is not an appropriate reaction to me because of our inherent equality. 7, some of the more later steps in this course, however, involve a more direct approach to God himself. So as we move through some of these workbook lessons as well, the lessons are about our relationship to God directly. 8, it would be unwise to start on these steps without careful preparation, or awe will be confused with fear, and the experience will be more traumatic than beatific. Yeah, so he's saying that he wants this process as best it can to be a joyful process for us. Of course, as we talked about in the last episode, that our ego reacts to that pretty strongly and sometimes with fear. That's to be expected, but he wants this experience to be joyful for us. So we have to take it step by step. We have to start with reading this first chapter, reading through the book, slowly applying this to our daily lives. 9, healing is of God in the end. So he's saying that the end of what he's teaching us is that healing of God's love that we will remember in our mind. That's the end goal. 10, the means are being carefully explained to you. 11, revelation may occasionally reveal the end to you, but to reach it, the means are necessary. And you may recall that revelation is that temporary direct experience that we have with God, and that most everyone here experiences in their lifetime, where everything is at peace. There's no past or future. You're completely in the present moment. And so he's saying that that experience, that connection to what we call in hypnosis our superconscious mind, the Course would call that connection with God. Those experiences reveal what's in store for us. But in order to reach that revelation as a sustained way of being, the means are necessary. So what the way to get there, this path, this carefully outlined path is necessary for us as students of A Course in Miracles who are attracted to this course. Those means are necessary. Of course, people can get there through other means and other paths, but for us, reading through this text, slowly doing the workbook lessons, patiently and gently, that's the way that we begin to experience that oneness. Okay, so I am so excited that we finished chapter 1. That was a long chapter. It took us 11 episodes, but we started out with the metaphysics, and it had those 50 miracle principles and the introduction and preface and all that kind of stuff that we read. So each chapter after this, I think will probably be a little bit quicker than that. So if you want to stay in touch with me more, like on a daily basis, you can go to my Facebook page. If you're on Facebook, it's facebook.com/Cynthia Morgan Hypnotherapy. And I post affirmations and quotes. And every Friday I post a Course in Miracles quote. So that's a great way to stay in touch as well. Okay, so if you would like to say the summary of A Course in Miracles with me, that would be lovely. Nothing real can be threatened. Nothing unreal exists. Herein lies the peace of God.